On the 16th of January 2021, Gavin J. Conop, a aspiring filmmaker and lifelong Spider-Man fan, started an Indiegogo campaign to get his Spider-Man fan film funded and released. Conop had an Instagram page, GTK Central, which talked about the character in great detail. He posted his own Spider-Man fanfic series, which felt very edgy, yet also very CW. He would rave about how great the Raimi movies were, and would bully any new interpretation of the character, mainly John Watts and the MCU's rendition of the character on Twitter and Instagram. Gavin has deleted his GJK accounts, but he would be very open about not liking Tom Holland's portrayal of the character, and would also discredit anyone that thinks anyone can wear the mask. An important message in Spider-Verse would showcase Spider-Man being a relatable character for everyone. As you can tell, Gavin J. Conop is a traditionalist when it comes to the Spider-Man character, like all those prequel fans online that hate the Star Wars sequels or people that hate the fun Ninja Turtles. So with Spider-Man Lotus, you were getting a very basic homage to the Ditko Lee era of the characters with borrowings from J.M. DeMatteis and Jeff Loeb. Spider-Man Lotus was an adaptation of The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man and Spider-Man Blue, one of the most popular Spider-Man comics of all time. Being an adaptation, Gavin probably would need to change/extend some of the source material and be different, as what makes a good adaptation is one that borrows but also feels original. But Gavin was a traditionalist, someone who doesn't like change. Then, in 2022, actor Walter Wayne, who was going to play Spider-Man in Spider-Man Lotus, apologized for some racist and homophobic messages that came out in the past. Then, Gavin J. Conop apologized, and some messages were leaked about him, where he's using the R slur, calling James Wan something offensive, and being homophobic. They were teenagers when they were doing this. Gavin was a dumb teen for the entire production of this film, and people have photoshopped a lot of DMs to do with Gavin, but I still can't get over his racist one against James Wan. Like, what the hell, that's way edgier than anything an edgy teen would say. Anyways, he apologized for his past, and then the actor for Green Goblin came out as racist, and that guy's like actually racist. After all this, Gavin released an apology video, one of the worst I've ever seen, where he talks about the screenshots for 3 minutes, claiming they're fake, not doing a good job talking about the ones that are real, and then spends the rest of the video apologizing to John Watts because of one fake screenshot and probably because of his past tweets, which were all deleted around this time. The reason he probably apologized to John Watts was because Watts watched the first Lotus trailer and praised Conop on Twitter. Andrew Garfield also knew about the project as he was on a flight where Conop's dad was the pilot. After all this drama, Lotus was labelled the racist Spider-Man film. Videos and memes went viral, Walter Wayne's racist Spider-Man on TikTok and Twitter, and every single fan project to this day gets compared to Lotus and its racism. Anyways, now we're in 2023, and finally after 2 years Lotus is out. The $112,000 fan film, which had a lot of buzz and controversy, dropped on the 12th of August, 2023. Spider-Man Lotus is one of the biggest fan films of all time, possibly. It's definitely one of the most expensive crowdfunded ones, and due to its popularity and the controversy behind it, it had a lot of hype. A lot of people were curious, and Gavin J. Conop himself made a career out of shitting on all the new adaptations of the character, so it was definitely one haters, enjoyers, and neutrals wanted to watch. Let's talk about the movie. Yeah, it's bad. Spider-Man Lotus is a dull mess. It's a bland, forgettable film with contradictory messages and a messed up structure. Lotus begins with Spider-Man swinging through New York and taking down the Marvel villain Shocker in a fun, wacky, and zany fight scene, one that feels straight out of the CW. You see, the first 40 minutes of this movie does have a wacky vibe to it, one that kind of works in my opinion. The characters feel kind of cartoony, the emotional stuff is there, and this definitely feels like a TV episode of a show that appeals to preteens. If you want to watch a fun, independent Spider-Man fan film and are expecting action and some zingers, then definitely watch the first 40 minutes of this fan film and then give up because it just ends up dragging and becoming messy. The film ends up becoming this really preachy, rubbery load of waffle. Conop wrote the script for this film and he definitely needed some help because everything feels really artificial and boring.
Got no idea who they're missing out on.
No, they really don't.
Hey, look, I know that you were thinking about London. Are you still planning on studying abroad?
No. I don't know. At least not before I get the chance to see you on the big screen.
This entire scene feels like something from The Room.
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
And there's many scenes like this.
I thought you of all people would be able to understand that.
Sorry.
Look, you weren't the only person who lost something that day. But you can't admit that because you're too selfish to think about anyone else. Nothing is ever a problem until it affects you.
Harry, I haven't seen you in weeks. And the first time I do, you're passed out on the couch acting like everything's fine. Look, I get that your dad died.
Stop.
You are lying. I never hit you. You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
As the film goes on and focuses more on Peter Parker, the movie tries to become more serious and grungy. Instead of the actors feeling emotionally connected and damaged and the dialogue feeling rich and actually engaging, all of it feels like it was written on ChatGPT with the prompts, write something serious and deep. The serious and emotional fan film ends up feeling like a soap opera without the entertainment value that a soap opera has. Everything is played too seriously and everyone feels very immature. Speaking of immaturity, Gavin J. Conop is a teenager. He's the same age as me. He's like 19 or 20. And the problem is, a 19-year-old hasn't really gone through a lot in life. He hasn't really witnessed anything and doesn't really feel impacted by a lot of the things that have happened around them. He was like 17 when he wrote the script. What the hell does a white 17-year-old Californian know about relationships and dealing with the burden of a death being your fault?
I like some of the Gaga songs. What the fuck does she know about cameras?
The look of the film is very hit or miss for me. The cinematographer Tristan Lawrence does a good job making the film have a consistent look, whenever he's given freedom, that is. The movie feels more professional than a lot of its contemporaries, but this movie has a huge reliance on an intimate feel, one that doesn't really connect at all. It feels kind of annoying and distracts you. There's a lot of semi-close-up shots in this film, like 80% of it is close-up shots, and yes, that works when we want to see the emotional effects something has on a character, but not when you're filming a fight scene or filming anything and everything. This movie's formula is close-ups, rough shaky cam, and medium shots. The colour grading is also very meh. It's graded very dimly, it looks like raw footage with a higher contrast and 10% more saturation. Sometimes the grading isn't even consistent, like in this scene where Peter is darker without the mask. For someone who's such a big Raimi fan, why do you make everything so dark and boring? The VFX work is also very hit or miss. There was lots of controversy behind the scenes about people having a bad time working on Lotus, and the Lotus team themselves uploaded a cool VFX scene just before Gavin's apology. Anyways, the VFX goes from looking like Roblox cutscenes to pretty cool depending on the occasion. If they need to CGI some cars, it looks wonky, but they did a good job with the movement of the Spidey model and the swinging scenes. It's also quite limited, which is good to see in a fan film, as usually they abuse the hell out of the VFX work and try to make that the main part of the film, as it's usually the only professional looking part. I kinda bullied the actors near the start of this review and said their acting belonged in the room, but I honestly don't think it's a lot of their fault because, like I also said, the script is awful and the teenage screenwriter is way out of his depth. I think Racist Goblin is actually pretty good. He's like really goofy and hamming his performance up and is the only character in the entire film that feels like his comic counterpart. The actor that plays Shocker at the start of the film also does a good job. He feels like he's in a Spider-Man cartoon and is kind of let down by the dialogue he's given, which makes his phrasing and timing sound off at times. I feel like everyone else doesn't really connect. They don't have any chemistry, and characters like Gwen and MJ don't get anything to do. The one scene I shared earlier was actually improvised by the actresses because, big shock, the 17-year-old couldn't write female characters properly. But every scene with them is a bigger step down than the rest of the boring scenes in this film because they're basically objects. Both characters are MacGuffins. Gwen is dead, and we don't get enough of her from the past to really feel sorry for Peter or those around him. All the scenes we get with her are very minimal, and MJ, don't get me started on MJ. Mary Jane in this movie is one of the biggest assassinations of a comic book character I've ever seen. She's just an invisible object who exists to get yelled at or mansplained by men, and then she F's off and recruits them to meet up with each other. Her mini arc is stupid. It makes the movie drag even more. The actress gets nothing to do, and you basically sidelined an important comic book character. She has no independence, no individuality of her own. She only exists to serve men and make them kiss again. It's really bad, and you could legitimately replace her with like any object and this movie would be the same movie. Maybe it would be funnier and therefore more entertaining. Gwen and Peter also have like zero chemistry. Every scene with them is more boring than watching paint dry. Lotus adapted Spider-Man Blue and The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man, two kinda iconic Spidey stories. So how could this movie be so bad if it had really good source material to borrow from? Well, because it doesn't execute the source material in a new, fresh and progressive way. The movie takes the plot points from Blue and uses that as the spine of the film. But again, Konop's writing isn't very strong and kind of butchers a beloved classic. The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man story, one that isn't as timeless as Blue, one that required a more unique and personal interpretation, wasn't given one. You could have done a lot of cool things. You could have had the kid travel with Spidey to all the iconic Spider-Man areas, and he could have told him fun stories about his adventures in those areas. He could have done a lot of fun, innovative stuff, but instead, he just has Spidey trauma dump about his girlfriend's death to this little kid for like 30 minutes. By the end of this trauma dump, he realizes how much he means to people, but also realizes he should spend more time with the ones he loves. But the movie contradicts that message instantly, because at the end, Peter ditches his plans to meet up with his buddies and swings away as Spider-Man in a very confusing, heroic final shot. In conclusion, Spider-Man Lotus isn't the essential character study masterpiece that it was promised to be. Lotus is a boring, long, mopey, semi-misogynistic film about teenagers dealing with stuff they haven't dealt with in the real world. It's angsty, edgy, and really dull. The movie looks very professional and had a lot of care gone into it by its crew, who I do think care about the character and the stories, but they didn't show us why they care. We didn't get a unique showcase or a vision that was daring or personal. Instead, we got a very templative film school-esque film about a depressed superhero who learns to not be depressed after 2 hours of moaning. But hey, film's subjective. If this hits you, then that's cool as well, because we all like different things and nothing is objectively right or wrong. Everything is in a grey area, and writer-director Gavin J. Konop needs to know that as well. This man made a career out of shitting on other people's hard work, and I know personally that he's bullied other fan films made by people who were less privileged than him. He roasted the way they saw the character and the way they portrayed him, yet those people didn't have the same tools as him, and I bet their films were less boring and generic. Maybe you should respect other interpretations and lower your ego, buddy, because your fan film was very forgettable and a waste of time for a lot of people.